All right. Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive.
Yeah, excited for this one.
I think this is going to be really helpful for a lot of our listeners out there, especially those aiming for, those top scores on the IELTS.
Right, those really ambitious goals. We hear you.
Exactly. And today we're zeroing in on vocabulary.
Because it's a big one.
Huge. And not just any vocabulary, but what it takes to really hit that band 9.
Hit elusive band 9.
That's the level where you're practically using English like a native speaker.
It's where all the subtle nuances come in.
Exactly. And we've got some great resources lined up to help us really break this down.
We do, yeah. Some really insightful guides that not only explain what Band 9 vocabulary is all about, but also give some fantastic strategies.
Yeah, actionable stuff that our listeners can start using right away.
To boost their vocab game, for sure.
So our mission today is to figure out what sets Band 9 vocabulary apart and how you can get there.
I like it. A mission. It feels important.
It is important. It's the key to unlocking that top score. And we're going to use these sources. We've got excerpts that specifically focus on Band 9 vocabulary development, and this awesome guide that actually compares vocabulary across the different IELTS bands.
Oh, that's so helpful, having those side-by-side comparisons.
I know, right? And it gives examples for all sorts of topics, like super practical.
Perfect, yeah. Because knowing the theory is one thing, but seeing it applied to real-world situations makes it click.
100%. So let's jump right in. First things first, we got to understand how vocabulary, or lexical resource, as the IELTS folks call it, is actually assessed.
Right, because it's not just about throwing in big words randomly.
No, not at all. There's a method to the madness, right?
There is, yeah. Examiners look at the range of your vocabulary, for sure.
Right, how many different words you know.
Exactly. But also how precise you are in choosing the right word for the right situation.
So it's about using words accurately and effectively.
And naturally.
Yeah.
Like you're not just trying to show off.
Got it. So how does this all play out across the different band levels? Let's start with band 7.
Okay, so at band 7, you generally have a decent vocabulary.
You get your point across.
Yeah, you can communicate effectively, but you might rely a bit too much on common words.
The kind of words everyone uses all the time.
Right. You might say something is good or bad without thinking about more specific synonyms.
So like instead of good, maybe excellent or fantastic.
Exactly. Or instead of bad, maybe terrible or awful. It's about those shades of meaning.
I see. So band 7 is like the foundation, but there's room to grow.
Definitely. It's functional, but it can lack that wow factor.
Okay, so what about band 8? How does the vocabulary step up there?
Band 8 is a noticeable jump. You start using a wider variety of words.
And making fewer mistakes in word choice.
Yep, you're becoming more aware of those nuances.
Like you said earlier.
Right, so instead of good, you might choose remarkable or impressive, depending on the context.
So more deliberate word choices.
And more effective paraphrasing, which shows you understand the subtle differences between synonyms.
Okay, so band 8 is like, you're getting pretty good.
You're definitely on the right track, yeah. You're using more sophisticated language and expressing yourself more precisely.
But it's still not quite that native-like fluency.
Not yet. That's where band 9 comes in.
All right, so spill the beans. What's the secret sauce of band 9 vocabulary?
It's a combination of things. First, your vocabulary is extensive and accurate.
Like, you rarely make mistakes.
Very rarely, almost never. But what really sets it apart is the natural flow and integration of those advanced words and phrases.
So it's not just about knowing the words, it's about using them effortlessly.
Exactly. You're using nuanced vocabulary, idiomatic expressions, collocations, all those things that native speakers do without even thinking.
Can you give us an example?
Sure. Instead of just saying improve, you might use enhance or ameliorate.
Ooh, those are fancy.
But they sound natural in the right context. It's
Yeah.
like you're painting a picture with your words, adding those fine details.
I love that analogy. So band 9 is like being a master artist with language.
Precisely. It's about having a deep understanding of the language and using it with both precision and creativity.
Wow, that's impressive. All right, so now that we know what we're aiming for, how do we actually get there? How do we develop this band 9 vocabulary?
Our sources highlight a few key strategies. One of the most important is immersion.
Immersion, like diving headfirst into a pool of words.
Sort of. It's about surrounding yourself with high-quality English language content.
So like reading and listening to lots of English.
Exactly. But not just any content. Think academic journals like The Economist or The Guardian.
Those are pretty dense.
They are, but that's the point. You want to expose yourself to sophisticated vocabulary and context.
So we're not talking about reading comic books here.
Not exactly, unless they're very advanced comic books, but also reading literature, high-scoring IELTS essays, seeing how those words are used in practice.
Makes sense. What about listening?
Similar idea. TED Talks are fantastic, so are academic lectures, and there are some great IELTS podcasts out there.
Like IELTS Advantage or All Ears English. Those are good.
Those are both excellent, and it's not just about passively listening. Try to actively notice those advanced words and phrases, how they're used.
So be a little bit of a warn detective while you're listening.
Love that. Exactly. And it's not just about recognizing the words, it's about understanding their nuances, their connotations, and their appropriate usage.
Right, that's how you really start to own the language.
Spot on. Now, the next strategy is equally important. Keeping an active vocabulary notebook.
Not just any notebook, but an active one.
Right. It's not just jotting down words and their definitions. It's a system.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What makes it so special?
So when you come across a new word, you write it down, of course, but you also note its synonyms, antonyms, maybe even a little sketch or image that helps you remember it.
Visual aids, I like it.
And then, most importantly, you write example sentences.
Ah, so you can see how it's actually used.
Exactly. You might have 5 or 6 different sentences showing different contexts, different nuances of meaning.
So you're not just learning the word, you're learning how to use it.
That's the key. And this active notebook becomes your personalized dictionary of awesome vocabulary.
Sounds pretty powerful.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you actually remember all these words? Do you stare at the notebook and hope for the best?
Not quite. You have to review regularly. And there are some really effective techniques for that, like spaced repetition.
Spaced repetition?
Yeah, it's this awesome system where you revisit words at increasing intervals. So you might review a word today, then again in a few days, then a week later, and so on.
So it's like jogging your memory, reminding yourself of those words.
Exactly. And there are apps that can help you with this, like Anki.
Anki, yeah, I've heard of that.
It's fantastic for spaced repetition. And as you're reviewing, don't forget to actually use the words. Write sentences, have conversations, practice, practice, practice.
So it's not just passive memorization, it's about making those words part of your active vocabulary.
Absolutely. All right, so we've got immersion, we've got the active notebook, and of course, regular review.
What else is crucial for reaching that Band 9 level?
Practice and feedback.
Makes sense. You have to actually use the vocabulary you're learning.
Right. So incorporate those new words into your IELTS practice sessions. Write essays, give presentations, have conversations with a study buddy.
And don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Mistakes are part of the process, but you also need feedback.
So you know what to work on.
Yeah. Find a teacher, a tutor, a friend who's really good at English, and ask them to listen or read your work.
And be specific about what you want feedback on.
Absolutely. Ask them to focus on your vocabulary choices. Are you using the words correctly? Do they sound natural in context? Are there any areas where you could be more precise or sophisticated?
So it's about getting that external perspective.
And you can also do self-assessment.
Like listening back to recordings of yourself speaking.
Exactly. Or rereading your writing. Be critical. Are you relying on basic vocabulary? Could you have used a more nuanced word or phrase?
So it's about constantly pushing yourself to use more advanced language.
And being mindful of how it sounds. Fluency and precision are both key.
This is all super helpful. Now, one thing I found really insightful in the guide was how it breaks down vocabulary across different band levels for specific topics.
Oh, yeah, that's so useful for seeing how the complexity increases.
Exactly. So, for example, if we're talking about people, what kind of words might you hear at a band 7 level?
At band 7, you might hear words like adolescent, sibling, or characteristic.
Pretty straightforward.
Yeah, they're common words, easy to understand, but they lack a certain depth.
Okay, so what about band 8? What kind of upgrade are we looking at there?
At band 8, the vocabulary becomes more nuanced and specific. Instead of characteristic, you might hear self-esteem, stereotypical, or sociable.
So, more specific terms related to personality and behavior.
Exactly. And then when you jump to band 9, things get really interesting.
Lay it on me. What does band 9 vocabulary for describing people look like?
You'll hear words like convivial or affable instead of just sociable.
Those are definitely not words I use every day.
They're less common, but they convey a more precise meaning. And the way you use them matters too.
Give me an example.
Instead of saying someone has a unique personality, you might describe their idiosyncratic personality.
Ooh, that sounds impressive.
And you might say someone exemplifies a remarkable blend of resilience and empathy.
Wow, that's next level.
It's about using those advanced words in a way that sounds natural and effortless, like it's just part of your vocabulary.
I love that. So we see the same progression across other topics too, right? Like health and fitness, for example.
Absolutely. At Band 7, you might hear words like harmful, appetite, nutritious.
Basic health vocabulary.
Right. Then at Band 8, you get words like sedentary, beneficial, detrimental.
More specific, more focused on the impact of health and lifestyle.
And then at Band 9, you might hear deleterious instead of harmful, or nutritionally replete instead of just nutritious.
Okay, now you're just showing off.
Huh? Maybe a little. But it illustrates the point, right? Band 9 is about choosing the most precise and impactful words.
And using them correctly in context. Like you might say, the pervasive sedentary lifestyle, compounded by the insidious effects of deleterious additives, poses a formidable threat to public health.
Exactly. That's Band 9 in action. And we see this same pattern in other topics too, like science.
What kind of words might pop up there?
At Band 7, you'd hear words like analyze, toxic, basis. Pretty standard science terms.
And how does that evolve at Band 8?
You start to see words like ascertain, breakthrough, precise, a little more specialized.
So moving away from general language towards more scientific terminology.
Right. And then at Band 9, you get terms like elucidate instead of analyze, or lethally noxious instead of just toxic.
Okay, I'm definitely adding elucidate to my vocabulary list.
It's a good one. And again, it's about integrating these words into complex sentences.
Like recent breakthroughs have elucidated the synthetic pathways that enable researchers to precisely quantify minute concentrations of pollutants.
Now you're getting it. So across all these topics, people, health, science, we see this consistent pattern of vocabulary development.
From simple to sophisticated, from general to specific, from basic to nuanced.
And that's exactly what the guide highlights. It actually maps out this progression for a bunch of different IELTS topics.
Oh, that's amazing. Like a cheat sheet for vocabulary.
Kind of. They've got examples for community, education, advertising, travel, government, the environment, technology, even essay writing itself.
So there's no excuse for not knowing the right words for any topic.
Exactly. And what's interesting is that even within those more specialized topics, the same principles apply.
Like moving towards more precise language, using less common but highly appropriate vocabulary,
Yeah.
and making sure it all flows naturally.
Right. So in essay writing, you might use phrases like in light of the foregoing or inter alia.
Sounds very academic.
It is. It's that formal, sophisticated tone that gets you those top marks.
And in technology, you might hear terms like cutting edge, seamlessly integrated, or robust architecture.
Those are great examples. So it's about understanding that this vocabulary progression isn't limited to just a few topics. It's a universal principle across the IELTS.
I love how clearly the guide lays that out.
Yeah.
All right, so we've seen a ton of examples. Can we just recap the key differences between Band 7, Band 8, and Band 9 vocabulary, just to really hammer it home?
Sure. So at Band 7, your vocabulary gets the job done. It's functional, you can communicate, but it's often basic and might lack precision.
Okay, functional but not fancy.
Exactly. Then at Band 8, you're using a broader range of words, fewer errors, and you're showing a good understanding of synonyms. But sometimes the use of those more advanced words can sound a little forced or unnatural.
Like you're trying too hard.
Yeah, a bit like that. And then at Band 9, everything clicks. Your vocabulary is precise, nuanced, and it flows effortlessly.
It's like the words are just pouring out of you naturally.
Exactly. You've internalized those words and phrases to the point where they're just part of your linguistic toolbox.
Yeah.
And that's what the examiners are looking for.
So it's not just about quantity. It's about quality, precision, and fluency.
Couldn't have said it better myself. All right, so now that we know what we're aiming for, let's talk about some specific actions our listeners can take to boost their vocabulary. Right. Let's get practical.
First up, daily immersion, which we've already touched on. But how much time should someone realistically dedicate to this each day?
Aim for at least 30 minutes, but an hour is even better.
And what should they be doing during that time?
Actively reading and listening to those high-quality materials we discussed earlier. But don't just passively consume the content. Underline new words. Look them up and try to use them in your own sentences.
So make it an interactive experience.
Exactly. And a key part of this is that active vocabulary notebook we talked about.
Right, that personalized dictionary of awesome words.
So make sure you're adding new entries every day. And use those review techniques, like spaced repetition with Anki.
So it's a combination of learning new words and consistently reviewing them.
Consistency is key. Now, another really effective strategy is to do thematic study sessions.
What's that mean?
Choose a specific IELTS topic, like environmental issues or education, and spend a few days really deep diving into the vocabulary related to that topic.
So like creating lists of words for Band 7, Band 8, and Band 9.
Exactly. And then use those words in your practice essays and speaking responses.
So you're building your vocabulary in a very targeted way.
Which is super efficient for IELTS prep. And of course, don't forget feedback.
Always ask for feedback.
Whether it's from a teacher, a tutor, or a language partner, feedback is crucial for identifying areas where you can improve.
And self-assessment is important too.
Absolutely. Listen back to your recordings, reread your writing, and be critical of your word choices. Are you being precise? Are you using a variety of words? Are you expressing yourself clearly and effectively?
So it's about developing that self-awareness and constantly striving for improvement.
Spot on. And finally, don't underestimate the power of technology.
Yeah, there are so many great resources available.
Vocabulary apps, IELTS websites, YouTube channels, they can all be incredibly helpful. Use them to supplement your learning, to practice, to get feedback, to track your progress.
So it's about using all the tools at your disposal to really master that Band 9 vocabulary.
Exactly. And remember, it's a journey. It takes time and effort, but it's definitely achievable.
So to sum it all up, achieving a Band 9 vocabulary for the IELTS isn't about memorizing a dictionary.
It's about building a deep understanding of the language, using words with precision and nuance, and expressing yourself with clarity and sophistication.
And it's about consistently engaging with high-quality English, actively learning new words, and using those words in your practice.
And don't forget the feedback and self-assessment. Those are crucial for growth.
Totally agree. So if you're aiming for that Band 9, start implementing these strategies today, and you'll be well on your way.
To that top score, yeah. It's
Yeah.
within your reach.
Absolutely. Now, here's a final thought to leave you with. Think about how mastering vocabulary can not only benefit you on the IELTS, but also in every other aspect of your life.
Communication is everything.
It really is. When you have a rich vocabulary, you can express yourself more effectively, you can understand more of what you read and hear, and you can connect with people on a deeper level. So, invest in your vocabulary is one of the best investments you can make.
Couldn't agree more. It unlocks a whole new world of possibilities.
Well said. And on that note, thanks for joining.